Fantastic. Welcome to Thursday Without Franco again. So today we've got myself and Karthik up on screen, up on the panel. And today Karthik's actually going to be my co-host, buddy. You are my wing person today.
Thanks, Jason.
For the topic of getting your Apex under control with Liquibase. So that's today's session. So I think let's just kick it off and we'll go through as we got an audience online.
Yeah. And Jason, totally my Apex deployment and my change management for my Apex app is totally out of control. Now it's way too bad, trust me. And so Jason, by the way, in our smart workspace, I've been noticing you've been having a way too much fun and with Apex. What have you been up to?
So yeah, I've been helping Stuart out with the F1 sim, as I mentioned before, is happening down in Victoria today at the Innovate Vic conference. And as part of that, I've been working on the Raspberry Pi data ingestion into Apex. So that's been something that I've been working on. Is the Apex app that we've been using for the leaderboard, that's been something that's been changing continuously. So yeah, really need to get that under control, and hence using Liquibase.
So when you did say that you were trying to make some changes in your app. So when you make those changes, you just export and import it. Like, is it like as easy and simple in Apex? Because normally that's what I would do in my Apex. For example, I would build an app, and then if I want to make some changes, I would try to replicate it, copy or export it, and then re-import it back. Yeah. So is that what you're trying to do? Is it that easy and simple?
Yeah, Liquibase does it a little bit differently. So you got the native import-export function that you see in the app builder. But then what we're doing with Liquibase is actually coming more from a data management perspective and database perspective. So Liquibase actually tracks changes around what your database tables are, and with what we've got with the SQL client, so the client command line tool, then we integrate Liquibase into that, so it can also do change management for Apex applications as well as REST data services. Mm-hmm. So that's why I've been using that to then be able to create the right Liquibase files that I can then put into a Git repository, so I can track changes and roll stuff back and do those kind of things as well.
That's pretty awesome, pretty cool for continuous deployment of database changes in Apex app. The way I've been doing export, import, V1, V2, V3, and so there's like 10 different apps in my Apex workspace, and it's totally bad, totally out of control. And
well, at least you got something, but having that ability to understand where those changes are, have that in a Git repository or any source code repository, then makes that a lot easier. So should we get into it?
You want to show us?
Yeah, definitely so. So let me bring up a couple of these screens. So just trying to find where they are. Cool. Here's the last one and this one. So let's just close a couple of these down so we don't get confused. So what I've got here is I've actually got two Apex environments. So one of the things as part of this environment here is I've got my, I've built this off the employee data, right? So we've seen a few times that we've got, Franco did the load data with the CSV and then creating the app. So that's what I've done for this employee data. Mm-hmm. And here's our dashboard that we see and some of these reports that we've got around the data. So that's already there. Now, what I then do, and I'm just going to come over to here. I've actually got here this is actually running in our on compute in our tenancy, and the tool there is just a download from Oracle, the SQL command line tool, which I've got 22.1 being there. So what I'm going to do first off is actually create my my repository for where I'm going to store the code. And I'm just going to go into that. This is where I'm going to, this is where when I'm talking about those Liquibase files, I'm actually going to put those files into this directory. Now, the next thing that I'll do here is I've already set up in this environment to connect into this demo instance. So here I'm going to connect to the demo 1 user, and actually that's the wrong one. I'm actually going to connect into this instance and just look at my password because I got that wrong. So it's real. Oh no. So what I'll do, let me just make sure that I've got the right wallet.
I've got a dumb question, by the way.
Yeah, go for it.
So what is SQL CL?
SQL CL is a command line tool for any SQL developer. Like, so it's a ultimately, I find it's actually a Java replacement for SQL+.
Okay.
All right. So I've got that. I'll go back in. Make sure that I type my password in right. Oh. Okay. So how's that?
So are you in VPN or?
That seems to be okay. Cool. Okay. So what I'll do is I'm just going to cut. Oh, I can't find that connection. Okay. So that is definitely the same database that I'm connecting to up here. All right. So that's definitely it. So, whoops. That's what I did wrong. What's the profile? Okay, now I'm in. So this is when I do it. Let's do a quick select all from EMP. So that's the data that we've got. And as part of Liquibase, there's a couple of commands that's there, and it's already baked into the command line tool. So I can then generate database objects, any of the objects. I can do my REST data services. I can do Apex. So what I'm going to do here is actually then I'm going to export out the employee table. Maybe I'll do the data. I won't do the data, but I'll do the schema.
Yeah, okay.
And then from there, this is the command that I've got to actually export the Apex app. So if I go back over here to my app builder, I'm just referring to this ID, which is my application ID. And then I can export that. Now, what it does then do, if I just come out of that and show you what's on file, it creates these two XML files. And as an example of the file, it's got all the code for anyone that's familiar with Apex and what's in there. It actually binds this into what a Liquibase environment looks like.
So is that the change set? Like, so
yeah.
Okay. And does it have to be in a YAML file, or it can be of, right? Like, can it be a JSON file?
So ultimately, this is a file format that Liquibase uses. Okay. So the fact that it's XML is neither here or there.
Okay.
So if I can show, I'll show you the employee table one. All right. It's actually got all these XML to describe all the different bits of it that Liquibase then knows. It can then track what changes and then create, like if I did this as a new file in a new one that you haven't got, it would know what's there. And it then actually picks up, hey, I only need to run this one SQL statement based upon this data to actually make the update. So it actually creates the update statements and the alter statements for you based upon the metadata that it's got in these files.
Yeah, okay. So you just showed us the export, and what about the import bit?
Yeah, so great question. So what I'll do, I'll come over to a different screen that we've got. So this is a brand new environment. So I don't have any tables. I don't have my app. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to connect into that. So I'll just go into that demo environment, and that's the same one that we just had here. And then I'll just connect into that that one there. So this is a totally different autonomous database that I'm going to connect into. And then the only thing that I need to now, there's a couple of things I need to do. So let me just, as part of Liquibase, there's a command called update, and every command I can do and help on. So that gives me all the different parameters that I need for that. So what I do the first thing and do a change log on the employee table. So it then knows that, hey, I'm going to import that or create that. So if I go back to SQL Server and do the objects, then it's got my employee table. But what it does also do, it creates these other changelog tables, which keeps track of all the different commands and what's been done against that. So like when you were saying before, hey, if I just had this one row column change to a table, it knows to just do an alter table on the existing EMP and expand that out. It doesn't drop the tables, it doesn't truncate them, it doesn't recreate them. It knows what it needs to do to alter it.
Awesome.
So the other bit to do an Apex load, Liquibase, and this is where it's a little bit different from doing an export import from an Apex. It's doing it at the database level. So one of the things that needs to happen is we need to set the security context around the import. So that's why I need this PLSQL to say, set this particular security group to be for this workspace for demo 1. So I need to set, once I've got that context set up, I can then run that change log against that F106 XML to then go in and load it up. So it's going to run that change. It's then going to then import all the different bits around that application, and then it's done.
That's pretty neat, managing the differences. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I've now got my Thistles of Franco, and then I log in, hopefully with the right password. And then we got our dashboard. Remember that I didn't actually put any data in here.
You did not.
No. So what I can do is if I go back to the object browser and then go to the data and load the data. Let me just put in the sample data so we can see that. Configure that. That should be right. Save the changes and then load. So this is actually then going to load into that same employee table. So I can now come back to my dashboard. There's my data. All right. So what we've really just done is use Git there and Liquibase to create that change control. And with anything from a source control around commits and merges and find those differences, we can then manage that through a traditional software development source code control to manage those changes. So what do you think?
Now, this is pretty awesome stuff, Jason. Like you've shown us how to make continuous deployment work for database changes, Apex app, and managing changes with the Git. And that's super cool. And because that's, like if you look at my kind of deployment, it's pretty bad. And that's the worst case scenario, which someone shouldn't follow. But what you've just shown us makes the developer life much more easier. And having the CI/CD organized in your managing your changes in your database and Apex, it's actually very useful. And thanks for sharing your experience, Jason.
Yeah, and that SQL CL tool is also baked into our developer cloud that comes with OCI, which means those same commands that I put in there, we could actually run through and run that in an automated fashion that, hey, we check into Git repository, and then from there, developer cloud can actually then automate those same commands into your environment. So it could be all hands off if we use those kind of tools.
The OCI CLI. And the other one I noticed, so I didn't like, I wasn't sure what Liquibase was till like the way you have given me that knowledge right now, is like I did find that in our database action. So there was a Liquibase box in there, and I didn't know what it was for. But Jason, you've given me a lot of knowledge, so now I understand what it is and how it actually helps developers to manage their database changes and other things. And it's actually add-on into our database actions these days. That's what I see.
Yeah. So, and you've actually had a quick look at this on our live labs, right? So
I did. I've been I've been a huge fan of live labs, Jason, and it helps me to do continuous learning. So one of the things which when I found the Liquibase icon in our database action, and I was quite curious. And when you mentioned last week the Liquibase session, which you're going to have today, I was curious and wanted to learn a bit more about it. And can I share my screen?
Yeah, go for it. I know Stuart's got a comment around the database actions. So yeah, while you do that, I might see whether I can bring that up on the screen as well.
Okay, give me 1 sec. Yeah, so let me go into the live labs.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is a recent live labs which just got released, and it talks about Oracle Database CI/CD with SQL CL and Liquibase. It's a pretty interesting experience I had personally. It actually helped me to learn, like from a CI/CD approach perspective, what do you need to do? What are the actual issues which developer faces, and how do you manage with some of these tools you have in hand? And just give me 1 sec. And so there's a few lab steps, and I would highly recommend, and I would post this link on our Zoom chat window, and it talks about how you can manage database changes and how do you track it, and how do you create apps like what Jason when you shared. And now I'm kind of relating those things in real action, and yeah, it is quite good. So let me share this link in our Zoom chat window.
Very cool. So what I know you're going to do that, but I see that announcement tab that you got up on the to the right of that. What's that?
I am still digesting it, Jason. So this is a recent announcement which we just made, and I think it's 12 hours. It's hot off the press. So we just had a massive partnership announcement again with Microsoft, where Microsoft Azure, the user experience will also include Oracle Database. So it's helping customers who are on Azure to also utilize Oracle Database on cloud in a seamless way. So it's actually helping them to have a hybrid cloud strategy in such a seamless way, and a better experience, and a big transformative journey. So I'm still digesting it, and it's a massive partnership announcement which we made with Microsoft. So there's a YouTube video between Satya and Larry. So probably I'll also share it in our Zoom window.
Oh, very cool, very cool. So probably some other things that were put on in terms of what's going to come out, how does it eventuate, and how do we actually have that better partnership with with Azure Cloud. So that's very exciting news.